For our next edition of Painting and Travel, our crew lays a course for Gloucester, Massachusetts. Sarah visits the famous Fisherman's Memorial, while Roger uses oils to paint the colorful dories dockside in the harbor.
The waters on this warm, breezy day in Glocester Harbor are full of boats, dozens of different types, shapes, and colors, many for special purposes, and people enjoying a perfect summer day of sailing, motor cruising, or fishing. We'll only have time for a quick visit here today, but I know Roger will want to choose something he can work on later, and boats offer an unlimited variety of subject matter. Gloucester Harbor is located on Massachusetts' North Shore on Cape Ann and was an important shipbuilding center as far back as 1713 when the first schooner was reputedly built here. Gloucester was also America's greatest fishing port and has processed millions of pounds of seafood over the centuries. This is the famous Man at the Wheel bronze sculpture commissioned in 1923 by artist Leonard Krask to celebrate Gloucester's 300th anniversary. The Gloucester Fisherman's Memorial pays tribute to the thousands of fishermen who have been lost at sea due to the very dangerous nature of their work. Silver and I strolled along the waterside boulevard and could see and feel how very much appreciated each summer day is here in New England, with residents and visitors enjoying every moment of this outdoor season.
There's 4 beautiful yellow dories behind me, and the lobster boat there is unloading its catch. I think this will make a beautiful painting. Colorful, nice subject. Let's go back to the studio. I'll do a painting there. I have all my materials out, and I'm using a 20 by 24 inch canvas. And with acrylics, I put in just these 2 colors, the yellow and the blue, just to get rid of the white background, and I'll work from there. So this is totally dry. I'm going to work with oils today. For my colors, I have titanium white, ultramarine blue, cerulean blue, Prussian blue, or phthalo blue. They're about the same, very strong colors. Indian yellow, cadmium yellow deep, phthalo green. And phthalo green is another one of those colors that's very, very strong. I don't think I'll use much of that, but maybe only on these rails up here, these green rails. Then I have alizarin crimson. I think I'll start by mixing a dark green here with some cerulean blue. Then I'll just apply this shadow side here with some of my yellows and cerulean blue. These dories have been around a long time. Albrecht Dürer in 1497 did the first painting of a known dory in watercolor. And these dories have been in use in Massachusetts as early as 1726. And just with some thin strokes, I'm just laying in the foundation here to this painting. I'll just build it up slowly, a little bit at a time. This really helps to have this yellow undertone on the painting that's already dry, because now I can put a wash over this, some thin colors, and start to get the look I want with this shadow. Yellow can be a very difficult color to mix when you want something that's really dark, a dark yellow in shadow, because yellow is inherently a light color. But I think this cerulean blue in here, on top of the already yellow that I have here, do a pretty good job. This Indian yellow is transparent, so I can go over this and still see my pencil lines. I drew this out quite carefully before I started because there's so many small details in here that I didn't want to start to draw it with a brush. I laid it out in pencil first. I'll take these same colors and put more cerulean blue in there. I think that might make a good color for the shadow side. And I'll add a touch of the cadmium yellow deep there. I think that's about the right color and the right value. It's hard to know the exact value or color that a painting might end up with, simply because until I get all these other colors on here, these are really open and susceptible to changes and variations. So I'm giving it my best guess as far as what color is actually going to be on here. Color is all about comparing one color to the next color. So when I put another color on here, I may find out that this is not quite the right color. Hope it is, but this will change as we go along. I'll move down and we'll place some more of that color right on this boat in the foreground. This side of the boat here is lighter than this side. This side right here is picking up some reflection from this water, some blue. But right now I'm going to make this all the same color. So as I get into it further, I'll start to refine these colors. This dory back here seems to be in more shadow than these other two, so I'll add more cerulean blue to this one and make it somewhat darker. Right here we have the reflection of the boat. It's a mirror image, but not quite the way you might think of a mirror image. When we look at this part of the boat, we're actually looking down on it from the top. But down here, we're looking at the reflection of the boat as seen from the bottom. So we're looking up at this boat. The reflection of this boat is darker than the hull here. And there's several reasons for that. One, the water can just be darker itself. It can be sort of dirty or muddy a little bit. And so it doesn't reflect quite as well. Another reason that can be darker is because the light from the hull of this boat is reflecting on the water, but some of it is being absorbed by the water. So not as much of this light can bounce back at us because some of it's being absorbed. Now this is also darker because, as I said earlier, we're looking up at the bottom of this boat. So there's not so much light down here looking up at the bottom of the boat as there is from here where the sun is hitting it directly. Now, and another reason I can't think of this as a mirror image exactly is because if I were to take this part of the boat and mirror this image, you can see that the image is in no way similar to the hull of the boat at the top. This gets very dark down in here, so I have my Prussian blue, some of my Indian yellow. It's almost the darkest part of this painting. Just going to leave a thin sliver here and there just so I don't cover up my drawing entirely. And I know where those boards go. This is called a lap strake boat. One board overlaps the other. It's a bit of a puzzle putting paintings together. Sometimes it doesn't really matter where you start, but I try and get everything going at once so I don't finish the detail in one area and leave it. I want to be able to work the whole painting as I go. So I'll work on one area, work on another area, another, and then I can come back and keep refining each area as I go. And that way, if I have to change an area or change a color or change a value, I won't have a lot of time invested in a certain area. If I were to finish this with a lot of detail to begin with, and then if it didn't end up quite the way I wanted to, I wouldn't have a lot of time wasted in putting in a lot of detail that I would just have to remove or change. So that's why I like to work all these areas, keep them all going, and not finish any one area. Here, this side of the boat is catching more light, so we'll make this reflection somewhat lighter. I'll still keep this blue in here. This is a reflection of one of these buoys that's hanging right here. So far, I haven't mixed very many colors on my palette. Phthalo blue, alizarin crimson. It's going to be a very, very dark color. And right in here, we have this post that goes down. Prussian blue, alizarin crimson, makes a very dark color. And right here, I'll put this very dark color right on the edge of this dock. Here's the post that goes down. Got another post right here. And then a few little objects on the dock. These are just little containers that I think they must put their lobsters in or some of their equipment. I have to remember that since I'm working from a photograph, I'm not going to see the colors as I would if I were standing in front of this, but it was just not possible to paint right here because it was very crowded. There was a restaurant behind us, so a photograph was the next best thing. Well, I think I'll continue by putting in this water. So I'll take my Prussian blue and I'll add some white to that because it's somewhat lighter than the reflection here, but it's pretty dark. So I think this will make a good combination, the Prussian blue and white. Now the reason this is as dark as it is because, again, we're looking down into the water. So in other words, if we were to hold a mirror like right here and we were to look down in it, we would see the ceiling. In this case, we're looking down into the water and we're seeing the sky, and it's always darker at the top of the sky than it is down towards the horizon. So the water starts dark down here and it gets lighter as it goes up. If we were to hold a mirror up in this area, it would be more flat. We would be looking at a mirror at this angle, and we would be getting some reflection from this way. And this would be the horizon down here. So this is lighter, this is darker up here. And as we look down into the mirror, we see the reflection right above it. So this is darker, that's lighter. So we'll start with this dark in here. I can pick up all three of my blues, really. Okay, get a little variation in here. For me, it's important to get everything covered fairly quickly. I don't want to use a whole lot of small strokes to cover a large area because there's really no payoff in doing that. So to get a large area covered, get a lot of paint on my brush, I'll put it on here and I'll just work it in, scrub it around. That will give me a nice flat area really quickly. And that's pretty much what I need, just a nice big flat area. Now I can go in with this later, which I will, and put some variation, some lighter strokes that indicate a little bit of ripple on the water. But right now we'll get the solid color in. Here's cerulean blue, white, and I'll start to make this lighter as I go up this way. See, I can cover this very quickly with a large brush and then scrub it around. That will make it nice and flat, even that all out. Up in here, we'll do the same thing. I'm trying to be careful not to mix my blues with these greens very much. Okay, down right here, I've got a hard sort of line. I do want to mix that, so I'll just take these two colors, so go back and forth, and blend those. There, now I have more of a soft edge there. Some more white, cerulean blue. Keep lightening this up here. This is a good brush with a nice chisel edge on it so I can cut around things easily. I don't like to use old beat up brushes unless it's for things like weeds and foliage, and that works good. But on something like this, I want a nice brush. They wear out pretty quickly, but that's kind of the cost of doing business as a painter. There, and since these are oils, this will stay wet for a nice long time, so I can blend these as I need to. Here I have one more little patch of water. There. I'm getting the canvas covered now. The only thing that remains is this area up here, so let's put a coat of paint on that. And then we can start putting in more details. This dock is a warm color, so I'll mix some alizarin crimson, some blue, get kind of an orange color there. I'm trying to check my values here to be sure I get everything right. The lightest part of this painting, I think, is going to be here in this boat. I think the next lightest part might be right over in here where this dock is. So I think I need to put some more white in there and lighten it. I'm keeping these colors all kind of in the yellow and blue and green range, just to keep some harmony in this painting. Just blocking these in as big areas. This side of the post here is catching some light, as is this post right here, just a little bit. Most of this post is out of the picture. I'll wash my brush, and I'll make the dark side of this post. I'll pick up my green and my red. Phthalo green, alizarin crimson. I'll wipe my brush off, and I'll soften this edge. Need to keep wiping my brush off so they don't mix more than I want them to. Well, this is good to get everything covered. Now I can go in and start adjusting and putting in more detail and refining each of these large areas. Now I'll start putting in some of the darks. Just going to mix up a neutral color here with my three primary colors, red, yellow, and blue. I'll make a dark color. I'm going to keep this warm, so I'll probably put in more yellow and red than I will blue. Keep this warm. And even with this big brush, number 6 flat, since it's a new brush, I can use it right on its edge, and I can cut in these fine lines. I really don't need a pointed brush for this. Some of these lines get pretty fine, so I am going to pick up a smaller brush and add this detail. But I often use a larger brush to put in small areas, especially if that brush is a new brush and has that good chisel point on it. Actually, using a small brush like this does not hold the amount of paint that this larger brush does, so really the paint doesn't lay down quite as nicely as with the larger brush. I have to use this ruler here to keep my paint out of these wet oils. If I was using acrylics, I wouldn't have to worry about that. On these lap straight boards, since they overlap each other, they cast a small shadow on one side here as the boards go in. Makes a nice little feature. Continue these shadows down, and I'll place these boards in here that are running on the deck. That's one feature of a dory, is that they all have flat bottoms. They're all flat bottom boats. I'm often asked what color I mix to do certain things on a canvas. That's really hard to say, because here we've got some dark shadows, and a number of colors could be used to achieve what I think is the right value and the right color. But in this case, I've just taken a combination of my alizarin crimson and my phthalo green. That will make kind of a neutral color. And when it mixes with the already wet yellow on here, it seems to make just the right value and the right color for this dark rib that goes down here. So it's a bit of an odd combination, but it works. So the answer to the question of what color do you make it seems to be always different. And I'm sure I could have made the same value and same color with maybe another combination of these same colors. Here we have this shadow right across the deck of this boat. So I'll just use the same color here with the red and green. Since red and green are opposite colors, they'll sort of neutralize each other and make kind of a neutral color, and then mixed with this yellow seems to work pretty good. This rib that comes down here is actually made out of 2 pieces, and that piece breaks right in here. So there's one piece that comes here, and then there's another piece that comes down here, and they overlap right here. So it's thicker right in this area. Sort of a minor detail, but I might add that because there's really not that much detail in the boat. I mean, what's going to make this painting, I think, is first of all the big shapes. That's what everybody looks at first. That's what draws the attention. But then after that, people zero in on the detail, which is sort of fun to look at. So I think I'll add as much detail as I can to these portions here of the boat. I think the next step will be to put in this rail. So I'll take my phthalo green, very, very powerful green. This green is not of much use to me on most landscapes. It's just too vivid. But on this railing here, I think it will be just about right. We have basically 2 values going on here. We have this light side and then this shadow side. I think I'll put in this shadow side first, the dark side. So I'm going to take this same color, just put more white in it, maybe a touch of yellow. That will make that a more vivid green. I've got my brush loaded up with paint here, so when I apply this, it should stay this green and not mix too much with the other colors I have here that are still wet. And this rail bends around to the back. I'll take this darker green. Here was the lighter side of the rail, and here was the shadow side I used right up here. But I'm going to take this color, and I'm going to put it right in here. And this will mix with the paint I just put on and give me a slightly darker look to differentiate between the top of this rail and the side of it. So now let's move down to the stern. I did notice earlier in the photograph that this side of the boat was picking up quite a bit of blue color from the reflection of the water here. So this is too green for me. So I'm going to take cerulean blue, mix it with some white. I don't want too much on my brush, so I'm going to wipe this off. This is still wet, of course, since this is oils. So what's going to happen is this cerulean blue is going to mix with this green that's already on there. This is one disadvantage of using oils is I can't really put any glazes on here because everything is still wet. Now, if I were using acrylics, this would be dry and I could put a glaze over it. The other alternative here would be just to wait for maybe a week and then I could put a glaze over it, but I'm impatient that way. I don't want to wait. I actually lose interest in a painting if I do that, and I just sort of lose my initiative and lose my pace. So we won't be putting any glazes on this particular painting here. With the phthalo green, and I'll take some blue. That makes a very, very dark green. And this rail right here, this is the top of the rail, and now we'll put the side of the rail in with this flat brush. Right there, as it comes around the back side. And we can do the same here. So I'm going to wash my brush off, and with my cadmium yellow deep, we'll place some of that color over this to lighten this. And right in here too, because this has just ended up as being too green for me. I'm putting white in this, because right on this side here, it tends to pick up more light than anywhere on the side. There's some bolts protruding out on the back side here, right here. And although these boats are in very beautiful condition, I'm going to add a little character by just maybe dragging this down and adding what might look like some stain or rust going down the side. Take the cadmium yellow deep with this green, and I'll move my brush somewhat to try and get that reflective feel in there. Here's where those planks come around the edge. I want this to have a very soft look to it, so I don't want to get very many hard edges on there. I may soften those somewhat. These horizontal brush strokes also help to give it a look of water. Do the same thing on the front, only make this darker. Now the reference photo doesn't show me much here because it was cut off in the photograph, so I just have to sort of guess it here. I think I'll take my cerulean blue on this side, because this is lighter over here, and I'll do the same thing as I did on the right, only make that cooler. Now, I have to be careful here. What I've just done is I've gotten this lighter than the water, and actually, as I see in the photograph, this is really much darker than the water, so that's really the wrong color, isn't it? I'll have to change that. Just pick up my ultramarine blue, just a touch of white, and I'll go over that. I have to keep checking myself as to the colors and the values of everything I put on here. It can be very deceiving at times. It can be very difficult to know what colors and what values to put on there, especially if I'm not constantly checking my reference photograph. Here again, I'll add some horizontal strokes in here. The water is very calm, so there's very few reflections in here, but I'm going to add one or two. Cerulean blue and white, and I'll add a couple right across here. These kind of go parallel. I'll wash my brush out, wipe it off, and I'll blend these so they're nice and soft. I don't want them to be a very important feature here, just enough to give a little bit of motion to this dark blue water. We'll do the same over here. And I'll cut this right into the boat, pick up more cerulean blue and white. I'll do this right in here, and we'll bring that right in to where the reflection starts of the boat. I'll make this cerulean blue lighter and and a few small highlights, just indication of a few ripples. To finish this painting, I'm going to use the same procedure I used here to finish these other two dories, and then I'll add the detail here on this dock. I'd like to show you a few other nautical paintings I've done in the past, and then we'll take a look at this as a finished piece. Here's an example of another type of beautifully crafted lapstrake boat. These were rental rowboats on the Hudson River near New York, and an unkept dinghy. Flat-bottom boats like these are used in Apalachicola, Florida by oystermen. They see a lot of rugged use. I enjoy painting pleasure boats of all types, but especially if they have character, like this Gatsby. Weather certainly takes a toll on everything near the water. This rowboat comes apart at the seams, and I've titled this painting Dinosaur, with all its bones showing. A magnificent boat in its day, this Trumpy was towed out into the Gulf of Mexico for sinking just after I painted it. This is a bay shrimper, and these two can stay at sea for weeks at a time.
For more information about painting and travel with Roger and Sarah Bansemer, visit paintingandtravel.com.